Hi everyone, Chris Natzke here with Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching with your Mind of a Champion tip of the week. Today I want to talk about the importance of basics. You know, I have really grown to believe that if we are to experience success in any endeavor of our life, a level of mastery that we really want to attain, it is based on the diligent and consistent practice of basics. And I hearken back to my martial art career. One of the first things my very first martial arts instructor, Terry McMichael, said when I was a very young boy is he said, practicing the basics was the core of martial arts. In fact, if we didn't have strong basics, it was like building a house on sand. But if we had strong basics, it was like building a house on cement, and it would be able to withstand any of the elements. And later on, as I began to not only train but then teach martial arts, I realized is something that I teach all of my students now is that a black belt is nothing more than the master of the basics. So the basics for us, not only in martial arts or athletics, but actually just in life, is really a result of us diligently practicing our basics. So what does that mean? And why is that so important to us? Well, I think of a story that I recently read in a book called Raise Your Game. It's by a guy named Alan Stein, and he's a high performance coach. And he speaks about the first time that he met legendary NBA player Kobe Bryant. And he had wanted to watch Bryant's practice habits. And so he went up to him at a team function and he asked if he'd be able to observe him practice. And Kobe said, absolutely, I'll see you at 4 o'clock. Well, Stein knew that they had a team meeting at 3:30 that day, so 4 o'clock training was not gonna happen. And when he challenged Bryant on that, he said, well, I didn't say 4 p.m., I said 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. So at 4 a.m., there he is in the stands watching Kobe practice, and he said for 45 minutes, the greatest player on the planet at that time did nothing but the basics. Nothing but the basics. So after the workout concluded, Stein went up to him and he said, man, I can't believe it. You're the best player in the world. And I just watched you for 45 minutes just do basic ball handling drills and footwork and shooting drills. And he said, I just can't believe it. And Bryant smiled and he said, well, how do you think I got to be the best player on the planet? I have never gotten bored with the basics. I've never gotten bored with the basics. So we don't need to be elite NBA players, martial artists, whatever. We can just be basic human beings. But when we practice the basics, it can lead us to success. And so that's what I want to talk about both this week and next week. This is going to be the first of a 2-part series on what I call practicing the basics. And I'm going to go over 3 of my 6 top basics that we can have, or that we can practice so we can have great performance and happiness in our lives. So the first one that I want to discuss today is rest. Rest. Now you might be going, what the heck are you talking about, Natzke? What do you mean rest? Well, I'll tell you what, I'm probably starting with this one because it's the most difficult one for me. You know, for years I trained myself, not only as an athlete and a martial artist, but also as a business owner, that I needed to keep pressing and pushing to get ahead. Until back in 2000, when I was getting ready to test for my 6th degree black belt, I was training super hard for the testing. And my body started to break down. I started to feel myself getting burned out. So I went to my good friend, the late Dr. Gil Greiner, my homeopath, and I explained to him what was happening. And he began to tell me, he said, Chris, you are way overtraining. You're gonna have to start pulling back because you're getting ready for a major injury. Well, I was incredibly resistant to that because I had put in my mind that I needed to keep pushing and driving to be ready for this test. And he looked at me and he said, listen, if you continue at this pace, you are going to set yourself up for a major injury. And then finally, he looked at me in the eyes and he said some words I'll never forget. He said, Chris, you need to remember one thing. Rest is part of your training. Rest is part of your training. I mean, totally blew my mind. I never thought of that before, but it's so true. Not only when we're working out, or when we're working in our jobs, but also at night in terms of recovery. What are you doing in your life to get adequate rest and recovery? Because that is one of the first elements of basics that'll help us move ahead in a powerful way. Number 2 is nutrition. Nutrition. Boy, that's a touchy subject sometime. When I was training people at my martial arts studio and in health and wellness, and we would put them on nutrition plans, sometimes those were the most sensitive discussions I ever had with anyone. And a couple of years ago, I was asked to facilitate a discussion in a men's group about health, wellness, and fitness. And I was collaborating with a good friend of mine who was a personal trainer for over 20 years. And we started comparing notes about what we wanted to share. And we both, at the end of our conversation, came to the same conclusion. While movement and exercise was really important, in fact, I'll be talking about that in a moment, what we both came to the conclusion is that the best way for people to release body weight and to get in great shape was to be focused on their nutrition. Great, lean proteins, making sure that we're avoiding sugars and processed foods, and make sure we're eating lots of greens and fruits and vegetables. What is your nutrition like? And do you have an opportunity to up-level your basics in nutrition so you can have a much better life? And then finally, today I want to share the last, which is movement. Movement. Now, note I didn't say exercise. Exercise can kind of get a bad rap sometime, right? It's not about being on some treadmill for hours at a time. That's not the most efficient way to get our bodies moving. In fact, they're so designed to move just in our daily activities. But what happens is we get sedentary behind the computer, and what we do is we wake up, we sit down to have our coffee, we walk to our cars to drive to work, we take the elevator up to our desk and we sit down, and then we come back home and do it all over again. But it's about movement in a consistent basis. And I'm always remember when I talk about this subject of areas in the world called blue zones. Now, these are areas of the planet where people routinely live into their 90s and their 100s. And there's a lot of commonalities there. These people do have great diets. They have a purpose in life. They still are contributing to the community. But the other thing that they do is each and every day is they move. They move. So where do you have an opportunity to move? How about once an hour, just taking a break from your desk, stand up and do a little stretching and do some knee bends or something, just to get yourself moving. You see, my friends, I know that if we focus on these three, that we can actually make a tremendous impact in our lives. So my challenge for you this week is just choose one. Where do you have an opportunity to up-level your ability of rest and recovery? Where could you make some positive changes in terms of your nutrition? Or where do you have an opportunity to get some movement in your life? Because when you bring these together, you start to build the basic foundation of being successful and having a masterful life in whatever you choose. So, thanks so much for listening this time, my friends. I'll be back next week with part 2 of this. We're going to focus on mental growth and expansion. We're going to talk about the power of gratitude and also spiritual connection. So join me next time. But in the meantime, make sure you like this, comment, and share. I so appreciate you listening today. And this has been Chris Natzke with Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching. And we'll see you next time on the Mind of a Champion Tip of the Week.